Hey everybody, call me Felix. On today's installment of Lolo Lito's Pinoy Kitchen, we will be making Dinuguan, which is a blood meat stew. And Dinuguan is perhaps one of the more infamous dishes in the Philippine repertoire. That's quite a mainstream dish. Depending on the region and, of course, the family cook, Dinuguan is served in different styles. There's one way in which it's more soupy and you eat it with rice cakes. And Dad here will be making it the dry style, where the garlic accentuates the meat more and really adds to the richness of that blood sauce. Alright guys, this is the first step to making Dinuguan. The way Dad makes it is the dry style. And what he prefers doing is to brown the meat. The pork belly, as you can see, very unctuous, fatty pieces of meat. He prefers browning this early and to soften it. Now he's not going to make the really crispy type, which is what's known as dinardaraan in Ilocano. So this is just a dry dinuguan as far as like the broth is concerned. You can see it's on low to medium heat, and you definitely can hear the oil percolate over. And this is before you add your leaner cuts of meat. And then, of course, this is our blood, which really looks like Mexican mole. But believe me, that's just blood. And as a side dish to our dinuguan, we're going to make Siling adobo, which is the long sweet green chili adobo. It's going to be cooked with stewed with garlic and ginger. Very simple preparation.
Vinegar and
yeah. So for our Siling adobo, we have some garlic, some ginger, and some bit of water. Dad will add some vinegar later. Hence why it is Siling adobo. Now Dad has two burners going and we're gonna cook it. Personally for me, I love eating dinuguan with chili. Especially this type of chili. It's not super hot, it's just a little smoky. Sometimes they give off a little more punch than usual, so it's like playing Russian roulette with your chilies. So don't underestimate them. And the beautiful thing about it is this dinuguan will be very rich. It's not going to taste it's not going to taste irony at all. It's just going to be really rich. And then it pairs really well with a bit of spice in that chili. Oh, and Dad is going to add a bit of pork fat to this, just to, you know, make things a little more moist, as it were. By the way, I'm going to make a note here that in the Philippines, sometimes Dad makes is a little bit, well, I wouldn't say lazy, because he actually creates extra work for himself by making the cooking oil himself. And what he does is he makes it out of pork fat, so he just fries up pork fat. We call it between us, we just call it Fat Albert. So remind me one of these days to cook some Fat Albert on camera, and it's gonna pair really well with saluyot sariwagwag. That's a good pairing. Or Dad can do ding ding again, but we've already done that in a separate video.
okay.
All right, so this has been going for about 20 minutes. So once again, Dad is just, you know, softening the pork belly and then getting a nice brown, slight char to that meat. So there's a little bit more texture, but it doesn't get like crispy. One of these days, we really want to do my favorite interpretation of dinuguan is oh, that is a little bit of schmeckis here. Didn't get it. My favorite is fried intestines, or in Ilocano known as crispy bagis. And literally, it's blood and guts, but I mean that's my favorite. It just tastes like a light chicharron with a very rich red wine type of sauce. And Dad will add a little more pork fat just for good measure. And of course, Dad's not being very precise here. He's just, you know, playing it by ear, like a lot of home cooks do. Just using years of experience. with no preset recipe. Oh, and as you can see, if you put a little more fat there, it crisps up and then the oil starts to pop. And Dad is multitasking here. He's browning the meat here, and then he's letting the water with the ginger and the garlic boil for our chili pepper adobo. And I tell you, this is...
There you go.
And I tell you, this is like the best, one of the best side dishes you can have with like heavy Filipino meat dishes. So this goes good with anything. Adobo, it goes good with igado. And of course, like I said, Dinuguan for me is the ideal companion for this. Oy, oy, oy! I got sprayed on by the oil. Now, the hazards of being in the war zone, as it were, in the kitchen. And Dad, this will only take like about 10 minutes, right? To
Put the ginger.
and we put the ginger.
Oh, no, only
No, that's the garlic. Oh, sorry.
garlic.
So one of the key ingredients, especially in the dry version of Dinuguan, is the garlic.
Chi.
Again, we're multitasking here. So Dad's added some salt to that Siling adobo. And how long does it take to boil that and stew? Kind of like 10 minutes or so?
More than that, maybe.
More than that? Probably like 15 to 20, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you have to add some patis.
No.
No?
Vinegar.
Oh, this is your vinegar. Whoops. And now you add your bagoong, right?
Yeah.
And Dad's gonna do his tossing thing, aren't you, Dad?
Toss it.
So just like peanut bet, that's what Dad does. He will toss the vegetables into that mixture, which again has some ginger, some garlic, some salt, and vinegar and bagoong. Yeah. And then the next step is to add the meat once it's kind of popping. As you can see, that fat is got some nice browning there. And like I said, the garlic is one of the more crucial ingredients in Dinuguan because it adds some fragrance, it adds some... it rounds off the flavor so that it doesn't taste too irony either. So what you really get is kind of a really savory stew, minus the irony. Minus the irony. And of course you put some bay leaf.
Some don't, but...
Some don't, but you do. And you add your black pepper here, right, Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this stage you add the black pepper. So how long do you let this simmer, Dad, until you add the blood? For the Dinuguan?
I have to saute for maybe 10 minutes and cook the...
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, the master says you have to cook this for 10 more minutes and then before adding the blood, which again looks like chocolate. Almost looks like chocolate mousse. Now, of course, there's a joke that when you're a kid and your parents are trying to coax you into eating dinuguan because that's like the only thing they have on the table and such, they would call it chocolate meat. Now, as a youngin', I basically said, well, it doesn't smell like any kind of chocolate that I'm used to. I mean, you know how like Hershey's chocolate has that definitive type of smell? You just know that's Hershey's chocolate from any other different chocolate? Well, for me, it just smelled like an irony. Yeah, it smells like iron. If it does have a smell, yeah. And of course, it just smells sanguine. That's the term we will use, sanguine. You gonna put some sesame oil, Dad?
Yeah.
And Dad loves putting a sesame oil in his dishes. I mean, I don't blame him because it adds a lot of fragrance. There you go, just like 1 tablespoon in there. So really, this Dinuguan is gonna taste really aromatic. If you're really averse to blood and the sight of blood or the taste of blood, I can tell you now, what you're gonna get is a more aromatic preparation, and Dad will add the blood. So as I was saying, you're gonna taste some nice garlicky, some very pronounced garlicky notes. There's a bit of sesame in there, and that blood, when it's reducing, the irony flavor is reduced such that it's almost nil. The best way I can describe it, and I guess once we get to the tasting, is really just imagine a red wine sauce with the same type of texture. It's kind of coagulated a little bit and less vinous notes, whereas it won't taste winey, if you like to use that terminology. And I'm telling you now, again, like a broken record, I'm gonna say that this chili is gonna add a little bit of vinegary spice that's just gonna go complement this really well. And you know, some chefs like putting these types of chilies in the preparation, but in the dish. Sometimes they'll just, you know, for presentation's sake, also put 1 green chili on there. But I kind of feel that for our taste, we like it separate. And you can see our Siling adobo is bubbling over. Probably needs a few more minutes, right? So this has been here for about
Let it dry a little bit.
10 minutes, yeah. Tender?
Yeah.
You just add a little more salt to finish, right, Dad?
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, guys, that's not magic syrup. Alright, the chili is done, and Dad's gonna do a test to see how spicy it is.
Uh-oh.
Oh, what? What's for? He's scared because he will probably burn his tongue on camera. Medyo manghang?
Yeah, it's on. Oh, wait, it's hot.
Oh, for him, that's not medyo manghang. That's 5 alarm. And of course, I've mentioned before, Dad has a subpar threshold for spice, for handling spice. You want me to try?
Yeah.
I'll try 1 whole. There we go. This one. Dynamite. So these are so if you've gone to a Manila street food market, for example, and they make dynamite, which are those it's basically a jalapeno popper, but it just use these types of chilies with some cheese and put them in a lumpia wrapper and fry it up. This is the type of chilies used. I'm loving that spice though. Especially love those that kind of like get that quick burst and it just stays at on your tongue or at the back of your throat. Just a little bit of warming heat, but sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable, but that's what I like about those chilies. They're gonna go really good with this.
That's it, yeah.
So we have our finished dinuguan here, pork dinuguan, and of course our Siling adobo or our long sweet green chilies. And of course we need to eat this with rice, which is absolutely, of course, a perfect companion with a pork blood stew. Alright, I plated some rice on my plate. And now I'm going to get some of this dinuguan. Now, this is, as you can see, the blood gravy is reduced. It's coagulated onto the meat. There's a pool of oil in the bottom. That's kind of what you like, because you want to get a little bit of moisture here. I'm going to take this cut, of course, of pork belly. I'm telling you, I had a very light breakfast. I am ready to chow down soon. Put some lovingly on your rice, of course. Now, it would not be complete. It's chili. Now, of course, like I was saying, some people cook this all together, but I think it goes better as goes better separately. And that is a really good first bite. Let's give that a whirl. Now, the texture of the meat, there's a bit of texture here, so it's a little chewy. That's what you want because it releases more of the rich, unctuous flavors of the pork and that blood sauce. And of course, you have some of that fat with the skin on from the pork belly. Adds a little more chew, and of course, just the right amount of tenderness as well. That chili, unfortunately, was a bit of a dud. So I'm gonna illustrate again if I can get a bit of heat here. And like I said, these chilies, these are like the long, waxy ones. Now, I don't know the technical term for this, unfortunately, but at the market, they call them long, sweet green chilies. But they're not really created equal because some of them just have no spice at all. And then these pack some punch. I mean, you could make dynamite out of these. I mean, the snack people. You can't make dynamite out of it, of course. There you go. That one's got some heat. And you want that because it accompanies that sour note from the dinuguan. Now, dinuguan is characterized by a little sour note from the blood at the end. So after you get the rich savoriness of the pork with the blood, there's a little bit of a sour note. And that goes really well with the vinegary, the vinegar in those chilies. It's vinegar, it's got garlic, it's got ginger. So it all kind of binds together, as it were. And of course, you get some nice heat. The blood meat itself is suffused with that garlic. That, of course, added some sesame oil. There's a big fat chili. Here's a little piece of meat with some rice. And the chili's juicy. Kind of like in the way a pickled pepper would be. It releases more of that sweetness, vinegary sweetness. And here's with some meat. It's an earthy type of gravy, as you would expect with the blood, but lacks the irony. So imagine if you have not eaten blood meat before with this dry preparation. It really tastes like an earthy kind of sauce. And like I said, kind of like a red wine type of deal here, except it doesn't have the vinous notes. It just means like the earthiness. Doesn't taste minerally. And of course with this dry version, diffused with garlic, you have a nice variance in texture because of the pork fat and the lean meat. Lends a little chew. Lends a little tenderness as well. So yeah. I think my job is done today. And if you like this video, Please give me a like. Better yet, subscribe for more food and travel videos. And see you in the next video.